Yo, it's B a dig. What up? What up? How's everybody doing? Hey, Meal, D Jolly. Shout out Craft Crow for the resub. Let's go. How's everybody's 420 going so far? Oh shit, B's muted. You right? You right? And when you right, you're right. I
Oh
got
shit.
it. It was my fault.
Oh shit. Oh shit. What's going on, y'all?
D
What y'all
Jolly's like,
smoking on?
we used to this. B's muted.
Yeah, we figured out what that problem was. All right. I had programmed M and N as mute and unmute. I guess you end up typing with M and N a lot more than you think you do.
Mm-hmm. That's why sometimes those modifier keys really mean something. Like, so if it's like Control Shift M, you know, you're not going to necessarily press Control Shift M all the time.
Yeah. Oh shit. No shit. Oh, that's genius, bro. Combine keys. I didn't know you could do that though.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I figure we'll, smoke a little bit. Obviously, it's 420, but hop on and talk a little bit more about Jadam Organic Practices, and see if you got any questions. If the chat's got any questions, just kind of chill and talk about some Jadam.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. So I got a question for you. I was like, wait, bringing this up before we hopped on stream, but like, D Jolly, shout out to D Jolly, man. He be throwing terms at me talking about like growing JLF and getting into the more organic growing and making your own nutrients and whatnot, right? So he threw out this one, right, where you make it in sugar, right? So instead of just making
Your JLF.
your JLF, you add sugar to it and it makes KNF, correct?
Yeah, yeah. There's a couple of different practices that come out of the Korean natural farming or from Asia in general. Korean natural farming started out a long, long time ago, and it's the father of the person who does the Jadam practices.
Okay.
So, dad made KNF, and the son made Jadam, and KNF is based off of, ironically, the Japanese natural growing practices. So this dates
Oh,
back thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago at this point. And the difference between a Jadam and a KNF is more what organisms you're breeding and what the final product is going to be. And what I mean by that, like the final product of a Jadam solution is more neutral to alkaline, and the final product of a KNF solution is more acidic. So depending on your land, your soil, what type of plant you're trying to grow, will kind of steer you in the direction of what thing you want to use.
okay. Now, would you use a combination of both of these,
Oh,
or would you kind of
absolutely.
like favor one more than the other, kind of thing?
No, it's like using the best tool for the job. You'll definitely use both of them at some point in time. And it all, like I said, it all depends on the status of your soil and the status of the plants that you're trying to grow.
Okay.
Every plot of land or succession of land goes through succession rates or a succession growth pattern, and it'll start with weeds, and it'll grow, and you'll get bushes and other like hardier plants, and then eventually it goes in a curve up to trees.
Okay.
And during that whole point in time of the land successfully getting better and better over time, the different microorganisms and different properties that are happening to the soil beneath it. So depending
Okay.
on where your land is on that succession line will determine whether you're going to use a Jadam or a KNF practice or both. Um, it really kind of depends on what you're starting with. And
Okay.
at some point in time, you probably will be using some Jadam practices and some KNF practices. Now,
Okay.
you don't necessarily need to. Everything in the Jadam Organic Practices is what even the father would call it is an upgrade from KNF.
Oh. So these two
So,
had some beef. They were like, mine's better. No, mine's better.
well, over time, and that's the thing. It's not really a beef. I mean, we could call it a beef to get some more clicks, but you know, over time, science, a true scientist, when they find out new facts and new information, they adjust the theory on which they think is the truth. So after 30, 40 years of using KNF and finding out different methods and different ways of doing stuff, they figured out, hey, there's some better ways of doing it than even KNF. And when I mean better ways, I mean it's easier for the farmer. Because technically there
Yeah.
are solutions in KNF that are technically better than Jadam solutions. But if you can't
Oh.
make that KNF solution correctly, it's not better. You might as well just make the Jadam.
And the poison in it or
Yeah.
something, put the wrong ingredients or mix the wrong things. Yeah, I can see that. It's funny, like when I was growing up, my dad he had he was like, "Yeah, I gotta spray some bug spray, right?" But he had mixed his own concoction, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he sprayed all around the house, and it smelled like fucking ass, bro. There's chemicals everywhere. Right? So he smoked us out of the house. We had to leave and let the thing like defumigate with the windows open and whatnot. But yeah, you mix the wrong chemicals together and you could end up, messing some stuff up.
So yeah, that I guess that would be the huge difference between KNF and Jadam is that it uses a lot of brown sugar in KNF. So like a lot of the things that you're gonna make in KNF, you'll have to buy brown sugar for.
Oh, okay.
So that kind of takes away from the being self-sustainable. And Jadam, you literally don't need to buy anything. All the things in Jadam you can go collect yourself for free in the forest or, you know, in your own yard and things like that. You don't need to buy anything in Jadam.
Now, I caught this video the other day of this dude. He does I don't remember what his channel is, but I've been watching him for years. And he took like his weeds that were out back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like his garden weeds, and he threw them in just a bucket of water. Is that the same thing as KNF, or is that or like a
JLF.
Jadam's
Mm-hmm.
JLF, or is that different?
It's pretty much the same thing. The only difference between a JLF and what that person was doing is that in a JLF, we intentionally inoculate that jug of weeds or grasses or whatever it is with microbiology. And they're just counting on the microbiology being on the plant.
Okay, so technically, I got nutrients just sitting outside right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just take all those weeds, throw them in a bucket with some water, and
Yeah,
let
and if
that.
you can find some leaf mold, and this is the big difference between just throwing some plants in a bucket with water and JLF. If you can find some leaf mold, which is exactly what it sounds like, a bunch of leaves that have been starting to break down, and you can find white mycelial hyphae growing all over the leaves, and it looks like they're breaking down. It looks like it's halfway to compost. If you
Hmm.
can find that and had a handful of that in with the plant material and water, that's gonna it's gonna decrease the time it takes to make that solution and make it a better solution by being able to expel more of the nutrients from the plant material.
Okay, so uh, I got this bucket that I throw all my leaves in, right when I defoliate, and some of the leaves. don't dry enough because it's got dry leaves sitting on top of them, and then that lower level underneath stays moist, kind of traps the moisture in there and creates mold.
Mhm.
Uh, so I've realized that might be a problem in having in a small space with just mold growing on leaves. Uh, but I could technically turn that into a JLF, correct?
You could. It's going to have a smaller set of microbes in that JLF because it's the only microbes that attracted to the decaying leaves. When you get leaf mold from out in the forest or outside, it's going to have a whole host of different microbiology because it's exposed to more microbiology out in the wild. When you take
Okay.
a single material like a cannabis leaf and pile it up, it's only going to attract a couple of different strains of bacteria and fungi to break that down. But out in the wild, there's oak leaves, there's all different kinds of plant materials that have dropped down, creating that leaf mold. So, therefore, you're going to get a ton of different microbiology.
Oh, okay.
But
Okay.
you could make it out of just that.
Okay. That's why they have farmers that make these compost piles, right?
Correct. And that's another big difference between, cheers, everyone, between JF, like Jadam and KNF. KNF describes how to make an extremely great compost, and you can use this compost on your farm. Obviously, JLF or Jadam practices doesn't encourage you to make a compost pile. They don't
Oh.
want you to make a compost pile. They want you to take all your crop residues and either drop them right where that plant is growing, like a chop and drop, or
Mhm.
turn them into a liquid fertilizer.
Oh, so do they utilize worms in Jadam growing?
Oh, absolutely. Like, no matter what natural farming technique you're using, you're going to be using worms, roly polies, microarthropods, all the different soil food web actors you're going to be wanting in your soil, whether you're purely KNF, purely Jadam, purely whatever natural farming technique you're using. You're going to want to have all the soil food web.
Okay, so let me ask you this, kind of going off topic a little bit. So for like an indoor grow, right? If somebody was going more natural, more organic, and they had worms, worms would be um I guess sufficient for breaking down materials, but if you had like roly polies um or like some of the other mites or bugs that are in there, you would be able to, keep that soil revitalized, right?
Oh, absolutely. Because what
So,
worms do is they eat microbiology. They don't actually eat the materials that you put down. They eat the microbiology that's breaking down those materials that you put down. Now, that's a little convoluted, but like the other actors in the soil food web, some of them are shredders, and all they do is they go around and they cut up all the dropped leaves that are on top of the soil
oh,
into
okay.
smaller pieces, and then those smaller pieces are eaten by those smaller microbiology, and that smaller microbiology is then eaten by the worms, and it's this big, food web.
Big trifecta.
Mm-hmm.
So, would somebody be able to keep, like, I keep worms. I got a little worm farm that I started. Um, but would somebody growing indoor be able to keep roly polies and like other, the rest of the food chain web all indoor?
Oh, absolutely. Especially if you're growing in a raised bed. If you're growing in fabric pots, yes, you can technically keep the entire soil food web going, but it's going to be a ton harder. Anytime you're going, and this is why every natural farming proponent tells you the larger the pot, the better. because the larger the soil supply, the larger battery you have for your plant, and the more amount of microbiology that's going to be around, and the more amount that the microbiology can actively put nutrients into your plant. So if you have,
Okay.
like, unlike growing in a salt-based nutrition program, you
Mhm.
can grow a 4 foot, 5 foot plant in a 4 inch Rockwell cube with salt nutrients.
Yeah,
You
no.
cannot do that growing organically. Plain and simple, that's just not going to happen, because you need a large colony of the soil food web to be able to nutrient cycle enough nutrients to feed that large of a plant. And that's why root systems get so large in an organic situation, outside in pots, is because they need to have the entire network working together in order to achieve optimal health.
No shit. Okay. Okay.
So if we grow in beds, so it's so much easier to achieve that, because at any given point in time, uh, some of the top dress you put down 2 weeks ago is degrading and decomposing and feeding the plants, and then some of the stuff you just put on just now is starting to decompose, and everything's decomposing at a little bit of a different rate. And at the end of the day, it covers all the nutrition that that plant needs.
Okay.
Just like living soil is extremely like the human gut. We can survive off of only peanuts, right? We can eat only peanuts for 2 months and live. Are we going to thrive? No.
No.
And that's what
Yeah.
it kind of is when people are using synthetic nutrients, is they're getting a really great meal, and they're getting a really great meal every time, but it's the same one every single time. There is no variation. And when you're using a synthetic nutrient and you're, you know, feeding heavily because you want a large yield, it's not gonna kill microbes. I guess that's another big misconception that we can get down to right now, is it never really kills the microbes, but what it does is it puts them to sleep, because there is no free water around for them to live. So if you put a bunch of salt on something, it soaks up the water, right?
Yep.
Well, same difference. You add a lot of salt nutrients to a soil, it will feed the plant. Especially if you keep the EC right and the ppm's correct and the pH correct, and you're watering every day, the plant's going to do fine. The soil's not going to be great at all. All the microbes in it are going to be dormant. They won't be dead, they'll be dormant. So therefore, they're not helping you.
Yeah. I ran into that issue. There was a point where I got lazy and I didn't have the pot sitting up on top of anything. So I was just watering in, and at the time I was doing salt nutrients, and I fucking soil I thought was fucking fried. Right, and I look under the pot. There's a big ass salt buildup under there. And, oh yeah, no, it's threw the whole garden out of whack.
Absolutely, D-Jolly, you can use some of the JLF to start the next batch. A lot like sourdough breads and things like that. You can take some of the starter of the previous batch of bread to make the new batch of bread.
That's a good analogy. So like I've seen people using milk,
Mm-hmm.
right? What what uh what would you use the milk for?
Well, the main use for milk in natural farming is to make labs, or lactic acid bacteria.
Okay.
And the reason we use milk is because milk is filled with lactic acid. And when we're trying to grow lactic acid bacteria, we need that lactic acid for food. for those bacteria. So we use milk,
Okay.
and we usually collect the lactic acid bacteria from the air using a rice wash uh, water, basically. You'd take some natural rice, preferably brown, a non-bleached rice,
Hmm.
and you'd rinse that off, and you'd collect the water from that, and that has a ton of starches and proteins and stuff from the rice. And you let that sit out for a single day, and that water would collect bacteria from your local area. And when you add that water to milk, what you're doing is you're selecting for the lactic acid bacteria, because all the other bacteria that landed in that solution is there, but they can't eat lactic acid, but the lactic acid bacteria can. So you put
And
all
then you
of it
see
in
the
there, and the lactic acid bacteria eat up all the lactic acid and overcompete all the other organisms. So all you end up with is lactic acid bacteria.
and then you look in the jar and it's like split, right? And
Yep.
half of it's like semi-clear, and the other half is like
You got
a
the
puffy
curds and
cloud at the
whey,
top. Yeah.
and you can
Okay.
make cheese out of the whey after, or the curds, I should say. You can make cheese out of the curds after the fact, so you can have a natural cheese.
Oh, see, look, you learn something every day. You make your own cheese out of making some nutrients for some plants.
And then the main purpose of the lab is you can water it in, and that helps nutrient cycling. But the main purpose of it is to make other ferments. So you know how, like I said, with the JLF, you want to add some leaf mold to it.
Hmm.
Well, you can add some leaf mold, and then if you have some lactic acid bacteria or labs, you can also add some labs.
So you would mix it in,
Hmm.
just well, obviously not the whole thing, but you mix it part for part.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't have to put a lot in there because that's just inoculating it, and they'll grow even more.
Okay. Okay. See, look at that, y'all. You can make cheese and nutrients all at the same time.
And then if you
Look at
wanted to
that.
get real designery, you can take kelp meal, for instance,
Hmm.
and put that in a jar. Put just enough water in that jar to go over the kelp, and then add a little bit of the lactic acid bacteria, and set that aside in a cool, dark place. Come back to it in a month or so, and you'll have pretty much liquid kelp.
Oh shit. Okay.
It'd be,
And you can
instantly
use that,
taken up.
and you can use that not on just your cannabis, but you can use that on other plants you have outdoors as well. Kelp is really good for plants, for
Mm-hmm.
a lot of plants. What's crazy is, did you watch? I don't know. There's a lot of, when the drought was going on, before we got all this rain and all these storms out here. The Hoover Dam was all dried up, right? And and like after the water had receded down, the plants that grew out of that were beautiful, amazing. Like the grass that was growing there was so green, and all the fish shit was just sitting there, and then right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, that's the way I looked at it. And then I tried to apply that to my garden back when I was doing synthetic, and I ended up getting some fish emulsion, and it helped a little bit, but it never rebounded after what I did to it. So yeah, then I went organic, and I'm not gonna lie, man, Goblin's been teaching me a lot.
Hell yeah. No problem,
What
dude.
what uh what other uh what other natural farming techniques can be used like indoors?
Well, damn near all of them can be used indoors.
Oh shit.
It's just how you alter it a little bit to use it indoors. Like, because at the end of the day, when you're growing natural, organic, what you're trying to do is emulate exactly what's happening outside. So Like, there is no real difference between outdoor and indoor practices. There is none. Do exactly what you would do as you would do outside, if you can, including cover crops, bait plants, you know, the different
Different
JLFs,
insects.
FPJs, FFJs, WCAs, WCAS. Like, there's tons of different acronyms. But
Wait a minute. Hold on. Flag on the flag. You throwing out all these acronyms, bro. We gotta go over these. Like, what are you talking about here?
well, just like in the traditional NPK way of looking at nutrition, where you got nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and then you got the minors and the trace minerals.
Mhm.
The same thing is kind of done in the natural organic farming space, because that information isn't incorrect. The plants do need these things. And sometimes your soil may be lacking in that one particular thing. So you might need silica. So there is a natural farming way to take horsetail and ferment it, and you'll have a ton of natural silica, and you don't have to spend $75 a 1 liter bottle.
Oh, what?
There is a solution to quite literally every commercially available solution out there in the natural farming world. But
No
people don't
shit.
want to take the time to learn and make them, because they want the instant solution for right now. Well, the instant solution for right now is synthetic. You have to plan to grow organic. And that's the problem that a lot of
All right.
people run
Yeah, I've
into.
had to do a lot of planning.
That's the problem a lot of people run into, because you can make these free fertilizers, you can make these free pesticides, you can make these free things that will totally allow you to grow any plant you want to the best of its ability. But you have to plan that, because these things take 3, 6, 9 months to make,
Uh-oh.
because these are fermentations.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Oh,
I
shit.
said that, y'all. uh,
Technologies.
yeah, technology, man. This shit's crazy. uh, yeah, it's crazy. So you would use like different ones, and you would make different, different. I don't know, ferments for different applications, right?
Correct. Yeah, you can have one that's just nitrogen. Obviously, there'll be a little bit of other stuff in it, because we're not being synthetic. We're not doing actual chemical extractions here. But you'll take a plant that's high in nitrogen and make a ferment out of that, and it'll be your high nitrogen. You can take a plant that bioaccumulates phosphorus and make a JLF out of that, and then you got a phosphorus. Uh, and if you wanted, you can make a single solution for every single element that you would need to grow a plant. Now
And
that's a
then
little
mix
like
in what
that.
you need here and
That's
there.
really fucking going above board, because literally, if you just take the weeds like you're saying from your yard and some of the natural wild grasses from your area and make a JLF out of that, it has everything plants need. You don't need to get that super technical with it, but you can.
Now, I caught a video on your YouTube channel a while back where you made some. I don't know what it was. I don't remember what it was. It was green. It was a green solution, and you sell these actually on your website. Uh,
Oh, the Jadam,
yeah, yeah,
the Jadam
the
wedding
John.
agent.
Yeah. So what is that for?
Well, the Jadam wedding agent is purely for pesticidal application, and pretty much whenever you spray your plants, and you'll notice this if you spray them with just water, the water runs right off. It beads up. It doesn't really stick to the plant.
Mhm.
And what a wetting agent does is make sure that that water sticks to the plant. So when you spray with a wetting agent, you'll notice that the leaves are completely covered and they look glossy. It's not really, the water isn't really beating up, and that
Right.
that ensures that you're getting full coverage on your leaves and plant. And when you mix a wetting agent with even a commercially available pesticide, it increases its effectiveness by like 80 to 90%. If you are not using a wetting agent while spraying a pesticide, or even a foliar application of some nutrients, you are
Mhm.
missing out on a lot of efficiency by not using a wetting agent. Now, the problem with wetting agent is a lot of the commercially available wetting agents are synthetic detergents, and synthetic detergents don't degrade in nature, and they just build
Mhm.
up in nature.
Yeah, they
So,
put that film on there.
yeah,
Yeah.
Jadam came up with a way to make your own natural wetting agent that breaks down in 3 days when it's hit by UV light. So you can spray this stuff like nearly every day, and if you stop 4 days before harvest, it will be gone because it degrades like that.
Okay. So like you wouldn't just use the Jadam all on its own, right? You would mix it with something, or could you just use it all on its own?
Oh, you definitely can use it all on its own. It's pretty effective against the soft-bodied insects all by itself. Um,
Okay.
so like aphids and things like that. It can take out aphids pretty well all on its own. And anywhere from 1 ounce per gallon of water up to 3 or 4 ounces per gallon of water if you have a large infestation. And just that alone will knock down the aphids.
Okay. Okay.
But then
But
if you mix that with
generally,
the Jadam herbal solution and a
mhm.
Jadam sulfur, that makes it really, knock down pretty much any disease and or pest that you could come across.
So like if you're just trying to target like aphids or like soft body insects on the plants, you could stick with just Jadam. But if you got like a whole mess of shit going on and you're trying to nuke the whole thing without using a nuke, you kind of like mix that trifecta.
Hmm.
And then you kind of reset the now would that harm the beneficial microbes and all that that's in the soil?
Um, if you put too much, yes, it can technically uh, make some of the microbiology go dormant, because technically what Jadam wetting agent is it's literally just a natural soap. You can wash your hands with it, you can wash your dishes with it, you can wash your clothes with it. Um, but all it is a natural soap. But if you put too much soap in the soil, like, it's going to inhibit the microbiology. Like, that's why
Too
we
much
wash
of
our
anything.
hands, you know what I mean?
Yeah, too much of anything could be a bad thing.
We wash our hands to wash away the microbiology that might get us sick. That's. So using too much soap in a soil is not great. Like, just spraying and having some drops fall down onto the soil is not a problem. But if you're actively using Jadam wetting agent as a wetting agent for watering, that's not a great idea. I would use a yucca extract, an aloe, the Quilla. I can't even pronounce it right, but the Q that's on Build a Soil. Um,
Okay.
these are all great options for watering into the soil. Jadam wetting agent is purely for foliar applications only.
Okay. Now, like, say, would I know you said composting isn't really a big part of what KNF?
Jadam. It's a big
Jadam.
part of
Okay.
KNF. It's not a large part of Jadam.
So, like, if I was to say I was to harvest my worm. Damn, I always draw a blank here. Like if I was to harvest the worm castings, right, and I was to
Mhm.
make a compost out of it, um, would would that be? Would you add anything to that, or just straight up use compost? And that's all natural. That would fall under the natural farming, right?
Mhm. Yeah, like anything that comes from worms or chickens or goats or cows, like anything that you can use that comes from nature is part of natural farming. So, like a lot of people use chicken manure, which is great, high in nitrogen. You can make a chicken manure JLF, and you literally take the chicken manure and you put it in water with some leaf mold, and you have a high nitrogen JLF.
Oh, okay. So like if my plant was starting to show signs of like low nitrogen, say I didn't add, the right mix of stuff and it was showing like low nitrogen, I could add, I grew up a tea that had nitrogen solution to kind of like combat that, right?
Oh, absolutely, and that's like a big portion of why like people like synthetics is because they can fix stuff so quickly. But the thing is if you were to make these ferments and you had these ferments on hand, these are instantly available to the plant, just like a synthetic would be, and they fix it just as quickly. But if you have to go, oh, my plant has a problem, and then make the solution and wait 3 weeks because it takes at least 3 weeks for the solution to be made, and then use some of it, you're not going to have a great time. The plant's going to continue to go downhill during those 3 weeks, and it takes a long time for you to correct the problem.
Yeah.
With
So
the proper
like
knowledge, it shouldn't take you more than a day to correct the problem of a plant, just like it shouldn't take you more than a day to correct the problem with the plant synthetically.
like if you were to brew all this up, how long would it like how long could you keep it on the shelf?
Well, all these ferments work off the fact of putrefaction, which means that they don't need oxygen. And matter of fact, if you introduce oxygen to it, you were not going to get the correct thing that you want. So,
Oh,
like, let's say you made a JLF and it's out of, like weeds and grasses and stuff from your yard,
hmm
and you made 20 gallons of this, right?
hmm
You can bottle up all 20 gallons of that and store it in a cool, dark spot for eternity.
Ooh, you hear that, y'all? Well, salt-based nutrients you keep around for about a year if they stay effective, right? And they start degrading.
And the difference between that is the longer you keep around your ferment, the better it gets. And this is why I also highly recommend picking up the different Jadam books, because they'll tell you the different dilution rates that you should use on a 1 year old JLF compared to a 3 year old JLF. You might need to use 1,000 milliliters of a 1 year old JLF, but you might need to only use 10 milliliters of a 3 year old JLF.
Holy shit.
So, like I say, if you make these solutions, you make a larger batch of these solutions, you're done for a while, especially as a home grower, indoor grower, maybe some outdoor grow. But all of the solutions that Jadam and Korean natural farming teach are meant to be used on a large scale, an acre plus. So if you make these solutions and you use them as directed, they will last you years because you're using a 4x4 tent or a 5x5 area or a 10x10 room, or like you're not using an
Yeah.
acre.
Yeah, no. I mean, I wish I was, but yes, no. So almost you would have to get like a wine rack kind of thing and like, make all these. Hey, I'm down for it, but I got enough room over here. I'm about to start brewing up some teas and setting them off to the side. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Like my whole thing was with synthetic nutrients. I had some that were sitting around for like 4 years, and now they're what am I going to use them for? You open up the cap and it's hella salt built up on the inside.
Hmm.
Yeah, but with this JLF, you keep that around for years.
Yeah, long, long time. And like I said, it just keeps getting better. And let's say you make that batch of JLF from grasses and weeds in your yard, and it starts getting a little low, right? You keep all the solids in there. You just add water, add more grass and weeds from the yard, and keep it trucking. It lasts forever.
That's crazy.
So a
That's
lot of
crazy,
people
and it's
like
all.
they'll do a lot of different 5 gallon buckets because they
Yep,
got
that's what I was
lids.
just thinking.
They got lids. They can keep the smell in a little bit because while it is fermenting or putrefaction, it doesn't smell great. I won't lie, it doesn't smell great. But when it's done, it doesn't smell at all.
Oh, okay. So it's just that like decomposition
Mm-hmm.
stage that smells. Okay. And just like with the worms, I'm sure like there's rules, right? Like, add this, but if you add this kind of thing, you might kind of get a smell coming along with it.
I mean, when it comes to the JLF, there isn't really any rules to it. I mean, you can even add
Oh,
meats if you wanted to, but this is all dependent on your level of how much grossification you can take.
I can just imagine like you're making some JLF with some meat. It's all breaking down, decomposing, and oh, the smell that would come along with that.
Now, that's one
Ugh.
thing I will say I like a little bit better about the KNF is the fish amino acids. Both practices have fish fertilizer, basically, that you can make. But the one that comes out of the Korean natural farming, I like a bit better because technically humans can also eat it. It's that safe.
Oh,
And it doesn't smell as much as the Jadam. Because pretty much what the KNF version of the fish fertilizer is, it's pretty much fish sauce. Like in a lot of Asian cultures, they eat fish sauce with a lot of their meals as a flavoring, like a soy sauce or a
yeah,
Worcestershire, or it's a fish sauce.
yeah,
It has tons of great
yeah.
amino acids, proteins, enzymes that really feed the microbiology, and it really blows up the plant. And that's one that, like I said, I like a little better from the KNF side than the Jadam. Both of them work really well. The Jadam one smells a little more.
Ugh. Now you just do the same thing and put the fish in the water and let it decom or let it compost or decompose in there.
Hmm.
Ugh. Oh, oh my god, that smell.
And then with the KNF one, you chop up some fish, you put it in a container, you cover it with a ton of brown sugar. You make sure all the different fish pieces are covered in brown sugar, and then you also sprinkle on top some IMO4, which is like a whole other video. There's IMO 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that's like a whole succession of making different specialized composts. But you sprinkle on some IMO4, and it really keeps the smell down.
Okay. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to get into that because if you keep the smell down while you're making this stuff, you be winning.
Yo, hi neighbor, Mike Thriller, what up, what up?
Hey, what's going on, y'all?
Yeah, small pieces. The smaller that you can break up any of your things that you're gonna make into a ferment, whether that's the grasses and weeds from outside or even the leaves that you defoliate from your cannabis plants. The smaller that you can bust them up, the better.
Okay.
Because just like when you're feeding worms, the smaller you can bust up the food, the better. And that's because the microbes that are actually eating the food can be more effective when there's a lot more surface area.
Yeah, when I first fed my worms, I just kind of like broke the eggshells up in my hand and kind of like threw them in there. There was big pieces, little pieces, but now I realized I still got those same pieces of eggshell that are still sitting there waiting to be eaten and broken down. It's gonna take some time.
It
Now
takes some time, yeah.
I got a bullet, and I'm gonna start like throwing all the eggshells in there, and blending them up, getting them down into like a fine powder,
Well,
helping them out a little bit.
in the Jadam practices slash KNF practices, you can take those same eggshells, save them, make sure you rinse them out, obviously, but
Hmm.
save them, set them aside when you get a decent amount of them. You crush them up, you put them on a pan, and you brown them. You don't want to burn them, but you want to brown them. And once they're browned, you take them out of the pan, you put them in a jar, and cover it in vinegar. You close the jar up and let it sit there for 10 days. Once that's done, you have a water soluble calcium that you can just put in your water and water your plants or put in foliar sprays.
Hey, oh, that's legit. One of these episodes, we're gonna have to get into like foliar sprays because uh, I'm lightweight scared to use foliar sprays on my garden. Growing indoor, I got the light that's just beaming down on the plants, and I always miss that time when the lights go off to like spray some shit on there.
It is a lot of people are scared of that, but if you do use the wetting agent like we were talking about earlier, it never creates those drops of water that creates magnifying glasses that burn your plant. So like a lot of people don't believe me. I've showed it a few times. I'll spray my actively growing plants in the bud room right now with Jadam wetting agent while the lights are on, and they won't care.
No,
I literally did it yesterday.
that's my whole thing. Like I don't want to burn them. I've done it before. You sprayed like neem oil. Neem oil was my
Neem
thing.
oil you can burn plants with. If you use too much neem oil, you can burn a plant with that.
I I figured that out when I was doing a greenhouse grow out back, and I don't remember what I had. I think it was something on the plant, some sort of bug. So I started spraying it, and once you know it, I came in the next day, and I was like, the whole half of the plant was like, half of it was crispy, and the other side was like, regular, and I was like mid flower, and I was like, no, just lost that whole thing.
Yeah, that's never fun. You can definitely overdo it with the neem oil. And even though that's a good example, even though it's a natural thing, neem, neem oil, you can still go too hard with it and it can still harm plants. Like technically arsenic is natural, but that's not good for you.
Yeah. No.
And yeah, D Jolly, you absolutely right. You can take the leftovers from making a fermented fruit juice and make vinegar from the leftovers of that. And that's what's kind of cool about the Korean natural farming aspect of things is that you can pretty much everything in the Korean natural farming techniques is there so you can use it to build it in the next solution. So you pretty much make your own vinegar, you make your own cheese, you make your own lactic acid bacteria, you make your own photosynthetic active bacteria. Lala Bee, shout out Lala Bee. Happy 420.
Hey, happy 420.
But yeah, you can make literally every aspect that you need for natural farming and like supplying yourself with food
Mhm.
from the KNF and Jadam practices. And the only thing about the KNF practices, like I said earlier, is the one thing that you absolutely need to purchase, unless you are a sugar mill, is the brown sugar.
Yeah, Hawaii might be the only ones out here that are getting good deals.
That's what I mean. Like that's the one thing you're gonna have to buy.
Yep.
How's your
Hey,
afternoon, Lila B?
hell yeah.
Relight up this joint with some punch breath and some bubble hash. I got some from Trey.
Ooh. I got some gelato right now that I got packed up in the bowl.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Well, it's been dope today, bro. I appreciate you for bringing me on. I gotta get up out of here and get these little rascals off Miss B's hands.
I feel that. I feel that. Make
Hell
sure
yeah.
everybody checks out It's Be You Dig. He streams nearly every single day in the morning, and sometimes on the weekend he tries to get some in on the weekends here and there. But
I
make sure you
try,
check out It's Be You Dig.
hell yeah. Hell yeah. Appreciate you, guy. Appreciate you for bringing me on and teaching me the ways of the natural farming, bro.
Hey,
We're
anytime,
definitely gonna
anytime.
have to keep this series going. We got to link up about another electrical series
Oh,
or another
absolutely.
electrical episode.
Electrical Safety Part 2 coming soon.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Well, thanks for coming
Shoot.
on, It's Be You Dig. It's always great talking some grow stuff with you.
Hell yeah. Appreciate you for having me on here, bro. It's always it's always a pleasure. Every time I talk to you, you're always teaching me about something, man.
It's a pleasure. I love seeing the look in people's face when they uh, understand the idea and it just clicks and they're like, "Oh, really?" I love seeing that
Yep.
shit.
Yep. Yep. Hell yeah. Shit, man. Hey, I hope y'all have a safe 420, y'all. Don't do nothing that I wouldn't do. Bring those smiles with you, man. Show them off to the world.
Oh, absolutely. And if you do something that we wouldn't do, well, don't get caught. Like,
Yeah. Golden rule. Don't get caught.
well,
Hell
shit.
yeah.
You have a great day, SB. You dig. Hope you
Hell yeah.
stay nice and
You
high
too,
throughout
dog.
the day, and the little hellions don't give you too much trouble.
Hell yeah. Hopefully they don't. Shoot. Hell yeah. All right, y'all.
Later, beat.
Peace out, y'all.